Yeah, no, reeling it back in. So Michael and I, we talked about this matchup last night, and also we just got done shooting a video for Michael's channel where we talked about some of the concerns we have about this Kansas City Chiefs team going up against the Buffalo Bills. But I wanted to take it a slightly different direction here on the Kingdom Crew podcast. So this will be a question out to both of you, but is there any matchups in this game? We'll take a positive angle. Are there any matchups in this game that you look on paper, Kansas City Chiefs versus Buffalo Bills, where you say Chiefs have an edge here, and if this part of the team shows up, they will have a very good shot to win this thing?
I'm going to say running the football. I think last night was a perfect example. I think if we can find a way to, I said this earlier in the previous video, I think if the Kansas City Chiefs can find a way to get a lead, however we get that lead, and you utilize the two-headed monster in the backfield of Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, and you're able to chunk yards where it's like 4 or 5 yards at a time. You're just rotating those two, even bringing in, Samaje Perine back in there. I mean, even bring out Carson Steele for all I care. Mm-hmm. But, if you're constantly pounding the rock and you're chunking yards and you're doing that, to me, that's the advantage. I mean, we saw last night where Derrick Henry and Justice Hill were able to, literally just run down the field at one point. And I think that will be a disadvantage for the Buffalo Bills. I think, if you can get their defense, on their toes, they get tired. I think that's true. To me, that's the advantage. I would say, Patrick Mahomes is an advantage, but I wanted to kind of be a little different. And I think to me, it's going to come down on the run game.
Michael? That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I feel like the Chiefs' defense is better than Buffalo's defense. They're going to have to run the football. If they don't run the football, it's going to be a situation where those wide receivers and Travis Kelce better go out there and have a legacy game, because you need to establish the run in the cold in this AFC Championship game if you want to have any chance to win. And maybe this is just how my brain thinks, but when you said talk about some of the key matchups, my mind instantly went to what concerns me necessarily about this matchup. Mm-hmm. Something that I'm going to be watching very closely. Buffalo's offensive line is very good. They went up against that Broncos pass rush, and outside of a couple sacks, I think it was just one sack, they didn't really get to Josh Allen. And I know that the Chiefs defensive line sacked CJ Stroud 8 times. I think that if you could have lined Lucas and me up on that defensive line, we could have gotten through there too. So that's going to be a situation where the Chiefs might not be able to force enough pressure on Josh Allen. And also, when you're playing Josh Allen, it completely changes. You got to remain, disciplined in your gap, make sure that he doesn't get outside the pocket and run for just giant gains. It's going to be a Leo Chenal spy game type of situation. To talk about, I guess, something that I feel optimistic in, I do think our wide receivers against that secondary is a big advantage. Taylor Rapp left that game with an injury. I don't know if he is going to play on Sunday. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But all year long, that Bills defense has been a weakness of that team. Damar Hamlin, you can pick on him.
Yeah, I think both of you had something interesting to say. I like what Lucas had to say about running the ball, because if you look at the majority of these playoff games, not just the Chiefs, but everyone, the more successful running team is coming out of all these games. I mean, look at what the Eagles did last night to the Los Angeles Rams. Saquon just took over, and that's why they're moving on to the NFC Championship. That's how the Ravens got past the Steelers in round 1. They could not stop Derrick Henry. Both teams really ran the ball well last night for the Bills and the Ravens. And then, Michael, you mentioned the Bills' offensive line. I'd say that concerns me as well, because, yes, they got 8 sacks against the Texans. We know that they have a weak offensive line, especially on the interior. And George Karlaftis in that game, he had 3 sacks, and I thought he did well. But, his PFF grade was very low for this game, and I think the reason for that was because I believe 2 of his sacks were essentially attempted blocking with a tight end by the Texans. And so you can't block George Karlaftis with a tight end. That was just irresponsible by their offense. But, the Chiefs' edges have really struggled at generating pressure this season, including George Karlaftis. And that's why, I've been critical of him on this show, Of course, everyone's talking about him getting a big money extension this offseason, especially after that game. But it was a very Frank Clark-esque 3 sacks, if you ask me.
Had to write him up for old time's sake.
Yes, had to. But the edges, and don't get me started on CEH, who's not even on the team anymore. But the edges, man, you got to generate pressure. And these Bills tackles are very good. But then again, I look back at that playoff game from last year against the Buffalo Bills, and we didn't really get pressure on Josh Allen in that game. And everyone's like, what is going on? Why are they not generating pressure? And in fact, I believe they ran a lot of 3-man fronts. And it was because Steve Spagnuolo's game plan was play gap discipline. We're not really trying to rush the quarterback in this game. We want to play contain and make sure Josh Allen stays in the pocket. And they were completely satisfied letting him throw downfield, but they were not going to get beat on the ground as well.
To me, I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences is like Stroud can obviously get out and be mobile. But when he is in the process of going down, he's going to go down. I think that's the big difference with the size of Josh Allen. And we've seen that, I don't know how many years, but like he gets out into space and has not only improved in that, that's part of his game that's improved, but the fact that he just doesn't go down easily is going to be a difficult thing, because that's where I feel sometimes the Chiefs struggle as a defensive unit is we'll get guys in a position where we're going to create a sack and we just don't finish that sack. And I think that's where Josh Allen will excel is like we may be in the process of taking him to the ground and he'll shed that and then scramble for 5 or 6 yards. So I think as long as they are finding a way to contain him, I'm interested too, like what type of coverage our defense runs, because like it's almost like, are they going to kind of zone up a little bit more than usual? Are they going to run more man because of, the wide receivers, and then maybe like try to force them to run the football, which is where the Chiefs for the majority of the season have excelled is, opposing run offenses. But I think that's where I'm going to be kind of curious to see is how our defense approaches their offense. Because you just don't want Josh Allen going completely ballistic for tons of yards and just running touchdowns and stuff like that. Cause I think that's where they would easily get the upper hand.
You just don't want to see that 4th and 2 happen again. That 4th and 2 where Josh Allen somehow is able to just bully his way into the end zone. That's the type of stuff that loses you a football game. And I don't want to see that happen down the stretch, but it is a concern because Josh Allen is that good and he's playing that good. I feel like you have to, as a defense, say, we do not want Josh Allen's legs beating us. We think that we can take that aspect away from him. And if he beats us with his arm, we died on the sword. Like that's just got to be the mentality, because you got to trust the guys on the back end of your defense with Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson and Shamari Connor, who had an interception in that first game. So it's just like you have to trust the guys that you have. And you also have to trust that Steve Spagnuolo is going to put guys in the right position and make the adjustments that he didn't make in this first game. Because, why was there not a spy on Josh Allen on 4th and 2? There are certain questions that I feel like we need answers to. But the one thing that I am optimistic about, the Chiefs always raise their level of play to the competition that they're going to face off against. And so, yes, Buffalo's great. They might be the best team in the AFC. They're not the Kansas City Chiefs. They don't know how to win games like the Chiefs do. And in a 1-game elimination, when you've got Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones, it is going to be very hard to bet against those guys.